The first time I heard it, I didn't sit up. I didn't reach for my phone. I didn't even blink. I just lay there in the dark with my eyes open, because some instinct told me that movement would make it real. The room was quiet in the normal ways. No TV, no music, no voices through the walls. The kind of quiet you get in a building that's asleep. The only light came from the digital clock on my nightstand, a dull red glow that made everything feel farther away than it was. I remember thinking I'd woken up for no reason at all, the way you sometimes do in a new place, your brain still learning what silence sounds like here. Then the digits sharpened into focus. 2:17 a.m. And above me, directly above where my head rested, a single step landed on the ceiling. Not a creak, not a pop, not the settling groan of an old structure adjusting to temperature. A step, heavy enough that I felt it in my chest, more than I heard it with my ears, like pressure dropped through the concrete and found the softest place in the room. There was a pause long enough to count 2 heartbeats, then another step. Same distance, same weight, same deliberate placement. I held my breath, waiting for it to turn into something reasonable, waiting for it to become a raccoon scramble, a bird scratch, a pipe shutter, something accidental. Instead, it continued, and my mind did what minds do when they're cornered. It began to count. 1, 2, 3, 11 steps in one direction. Pause. 11 steps back. Pause. Then the rhythm repeated, steady and patient, like a person pacing a narrow hallway while thinking through a difficult decision. 4 minutes later it stopped. Not fading, not trailing off. It simply ended, like someone had reached a conclusion and left. The silence afterward felt wrong, like it had been rearranged. I lay there for an hour, eyes fixed on a ceiling that should have been nothing but concrete, trying to swallow the fear by naming it. Stress, new apartment, sleep disturbance, anything. But there was a problem I couldn't name away. I live on the top floor. There is no unit above me. There is no attic, no crawl space, no maintenance corridor, no loft storage, nothing. That's why I chose the top floor in the first place. I'd lived under loud neighbors once and promised myself never again. I wanted quiet. I wanted control over my sleep. I wanted to know exactly what every sound meant, and if I didn't know, I wanted to be able to find out. The next morning, I called the building manager and asked, casual, almost bored, what was above my unit. I tried to keep my voice light, the way you do when you're afraid of being dismissed. Roof, he said. Slab, insulation, membrane, your top level. Any access space? I asked. No, he said, and he sounded genuinely confused. Why? I thought I heard something last night, I said. Like movement. He chuckled. Concrete moves when it cools. Happens. You'll get used to it. I almost accepted that because I wanted to. Concrete cooling, thermal contraction, a rational sentence you can repeat until your body believes it. But concrete doesn't take 11 identical steps, pause for exactly 2 seconds, and retrace them perfectly. Still, I tried to let it go. I went to work. I drank coffee. I told myself the night had been a fluke, that my brain had pulled a pattern out of random noise, because that's what brains do when they wake up in the dark. That night I fell asleep with a podcast playing quietly, a soft human voice filling the room. I woke at 2:17 a.m. anyway. The podcast had ended. The air felt heavier, as if the room had been sealed. 1 step, pause, another, 11 forward, pause, 11 back. The same rhythm, the same distance. The third night, It happened again. By the fourth night, my body started waking at 2:16. Not fully awake, not ready, just aware. Like something inside me had learned the schedule before my thoughts caught up. I would lie there, eyes open, heart already tapping faster, waiting for the first footfall, like it was a punishment I couldn't avoid. At exactly 2:17, it would begin. I stopped calling it noise. Noise is random. This was routine, and routine is what makes fear grow teeth. By the end of the first week, I was counting the steps before they happened, my mind running ahead like a child trying to predict a jump scare in a movie. 11. Pause. 11. Pause. I timed it with my phone once, just to prove I wasn't imagining consistency. 4 minutes and 9 seconds from first step to silence. Not 4 minutes. Not 5. 4 minutes and 9 seconds. Every night. As if someone had decided that was the correct length of time to be present. Random sounds are easy to ignore. Routine invades you. It teaches your body anticipation. It makes you listen even when you don't want to. I tried changing things. Simple tests. The kind you do when you want the universe to behave. I moved my bed to the other side of the room, away from where the steps seemed loudest. That night, the steps aligned above the bed's new position, as if the ceiling knew where I'd placed my head. I slept on the couch in the living room. The steps shifted over the living room. I dragged a mattress into the kitchen like a ridiculous science experiment. Lights on, trying to turn fear into something measurable. At 2:17, the steps started above the kitchen. It wasn't tied to a spot. It was tied to me. That realization made the apartment feel smaller than it was. It made the ceiling feel less like a surface and more like a lid. On the 9th night, I snapped. Not in a dramatic screaming way. Just a sudden, exhausted need to push back at something that had been pushing into my sleep. At 2:17, when the first step landed, I climbed onto a chair, with a broom in my hands, and slammed the handle into the ceiling as hard as I could. The pacing stopped instantly. Silence. My arms trembled from the impact. I stared up, waiting, feeling my heartbeat in my teeth. Then a single step landed directly above the spot I'd struck. Heavier than the others. Deliberate, not pacing. Standing. The message wasn't a whisper, but it felt like one. I heard you. I climbed down slowly. My mouth was dry. I didn't hit again. The pacing resumed. 11 forward. Pause. 11 back. As if the interruption had been noted and filed away. After that night, the apartment didn't feel like mine anymore. It felt observed. Not haunted. Not attacked. Observed. Like a specimen in a room where someone behind glass writes down how it reacts. I started recording audio because it was the only thing I could do that felt sane. Evidence makes fear feel smaller. It gives you something to show, something to point at. If someone ever asked, I could say, "Listen, this is not in my head." The first recordings captured exactly what I heard. Rhythmic impacts, steady and patient. But on the 5th recording, there was something else under the steps. So faint I hadn't noticed in real time. Between step 5 and step 6. A soft inhale, then an exhale. Not loud enough to be mine. Not close enough to be mine. My phone was on the nightstand. I replayed it with headphones. The inhale matched my breathing pattern. The exhale came half a second later, like an echo, learning to breathe. I listened again and again, trying to convince myself it was microphone artifact, a weird overlap of air conditioner noise, anything. But it was too shaped, too human without being fully human. That was the first night I stayed awake the whole time, staring at the ceiling, forcing myself not to blink too long. At 2:16, the air went heavy. The refrigerator hum sounded distant. Even street noise dulled, like the room had been stuffed with cotton. At 2:17, the first step pressed into the ceiling, and my stomach dropped as if gravity had changed. And then I noticed something worse. My breathing was sinking with the rhythm, not on purpose. Not because I wanted it. My chest rose and fell in time with the pauses, like my body had been trained by repetition. I tried to break it, breathing irregularly, holding my breath, forcing shallow, fast inhales. The steps didn't change. The pause didn't change. The rhythm remained perfect. And when I listened to the recording the next morning, the breath beneath the steps matched my normal breathing, not the broken pattern I'd forced. It wasn't listening to what I did on purpose. It was listening to the part of me I couldn't control. By the third week, my sleep was shredded. I was functional in the day, the way a phone is functional at 5% battery. Technically on, barely there. I forgot small things, misplaced keys, missed turns on familiar roads. I started seeing 2:17 everywhere, on receipts, on video timestamps, on microwave timers. The number had become a trigger. My body would tense when I saw it. My palms would sweat. One afternoon at work, I glanced at my phone and saw 2:17 p.m. My heart kicked hard enough to hurt. Nothing happened, of course, no footsteps, no pressure. But my brain reacted like it expected them. That's when I realized the schedule had moved into me. The time itself had become the sound. Then the building got involved in a way I couldn't ignore. Not because it changed physically, but because other people noticed. My downstairs neighbor knocked on my door on a Sunday afternoon. She looked tired in a way that wasn't just lack of sleep. Her eyes kept flicking upward. "Hey," she said, polite, hesitant. "I don't want to be weird, but you've been walking a lot at night." My mouth went dry. "Walking. Back and forth," she said. "Same time, every night." My chest tightened. "What time?" She frowned, like the number tasted bad. 2:17. The words landed like another footstep, heavy and undeniable. It wasn't just above me. It was traveling downward, through my floor, through me. That night, I did something humiliating. I wrapped cloth around my feet and taped it, not tight enough to cut off circulation, just enough to make walking difficult. If the footsteps were somehow mine, sleepwalking, dissociation, some ugly psychological glitch, this would stop it or wake me. At 2:16, I lay awake sweating, tape biting into my skin. At 2:17, the steps began above my ceiling anyway. 11 forward, pause, 11 back, 4 minutes, silence. In the morning, the tape was torn, not removed neatly. Torn. My feet ached like I'd walked barefoot on concrete for miles. My phone's step counter showed exactly 22 steps between 2:17 and 2:22. I didn't remember taking a single one. That was the point where I stopped asking, "What is it?" and started asking, "What is it making me do?" I installed a cheap motion camera in the hallway, angled so it could see my bedroom door and the length of the corridor. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't want anyone to know I was doing this. It felt like admitting something terrible about myself. For 3 nights, the camera recorded nothing. The footsteps still happened above my ceiling at 2:17, as always, but there was no movement below. I almost felt relief. On the 4th night, the camera activated at 2:17 a.m. The footage showed my bedroom door opening. I stepped into the hallway barefoot. My eyes were open, My face was blank, and I walked. 11 steps forward. Pause. 11 back. Perfect rhythm. At 2:21, I stopped, tilted my head upward, slowly, like someone listening for a cue. Then I turned, went back into my bedroom, and closed the door gently, the way you would if you didn't want to wake someone. I watched the footage 3 times, then 5, then 10, until I started to feel nauseous. I had no memory of it. Not a flash. Not a dream. Nothing. It wasn't sleepwalking the way people joke about sleepwalking, as if it's harmless. It was like someone had turned my body on for 4 minutes and then turned it off again. In the footage, something else was wrong. My reflection appeared briefly in a dark window at the end of the hallway, and it was half a second behind me. When my body turned, the reflection delayed, then snapped into alignment, as if correcting itself. That should have been impossible. But the whole situation had already demolished possible, so my brain just filed it under the growing list of wrong things. My feet bruised more noticeably after that, evenly spaced pressure marks across the soles. 11 points, 11 back. Like my body was absorbing impact from a surface harder than the floor. I broke into the roof access one afternoon because I needed to see something that matched the sound. I needed the world to provide a reason. The roof was empty. Flat tar, gravel, vents, wind and sunlight. Nothing that could pace. But when I looked closely above my unit, I saw faint compression scuffs in the tar. Not shoe prints. Just a subtle path. A corridor worn into the surface by repetition. 11 short marks in a line, then a turn, then 11 back. The pattern repeated, overlapping, like someone had walked it thousands of times with the same careful distance. My throat tightened. The pacing wasn't just a sound in my apartment. It was a groove. It was something that could be worn into the world. That night, the footsteps didn't start at 2:17. Silence. I lay in bed, heart hammering, waiting for relief to arrive. It didn't. The silence felt like a trap, like the pause before a change. 2:18, nothing. 2:19, nothing. Then, at 2:20, one step landed, not above, but in my hallway, on my floor. Slow, measured, heavy. 11 steps forward. Pause. 11 steps back. The exact same pattern, but inside the apartment now. The footsteps stopped outside my bedroom door. A soft knock followed. Not aggressive, not loud. A polite knock, as if someone knew I was awake and wanted me to open the door for them. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. No second knock came. The silence that followed felt like an invitation left on a table. That's when the voice arrived. Not from the hallway, not from the ceiling. Inside my thoughts, like a sentence I'd always known and had just remembered. We needed rhythm. The words didn't echo. They felt embedded, as if they had been written into the soft place behind my eyes. You stabilized the boundary. My hands shook under the blanket. I squeezed my eyes shut so hard I saw white. I told myself it was sleep deprivation, that my brain was creating meaning because it couldn't handle randomness, that the voice was just my own mind trying to explain what it couldn't control. But the next night I didn't wake up in bed. I became aware mid-step, standing in the hallway. My foot hovered above the floor. My body completed the step. Pause. Turn. 11 steps back. I tried to stop. My muscles trembled violently, like my body was fighting itself. The moment I finished the 11th step, the tremble stopped, and a flood of calm rushed through me so intensely it felt chemical, like relief after a panic attack. It was worse than fear. It was reward. My body was being conditioned. The pacing above my ceiling had been rehearsal, teaching my muscles the distance, teaching my lungs the pauses, teaching my mind to accept the time as law. Now it didn't need the ceiling. It had me. After that, the footsteps above stopped completely. My downstairs neighbor stopped complaining. She looked rested. She told me, almost sheepishly, "Whatever it was, I don't hear it anymore." I smiled and told her I was glad. The smile felt wrong on my face, like I was borrowing it. Because at 2:17 every night I still walked. Not because I heard steps above me. Because my body knew it was time. At 2:16 I would wake, eyes open to darkness, heart already shifting into the familiar dread. At 2:17 I would stand. Sometimes I was already standing before the clock changed, as if my muscles were ahead of time by instinct. 11 steps forward. Pause. 11 steps back. Pause. Then bed. Every night. My apartment felt strangely stable afterward, as if the air settled into place with a quiet sigh. Sometimes in the moment after the final step, I would feel something shift far above the roof, like a structure settling into alignment. Not in the building, beyond it. Like a door that had almost opened had been held shut for another night. I started noticing that when I tried to resist, the pressure in my chest built, like a rising panic that had no story attached. My body would tremble, my hands would clench, my jaw would lock. The only thing that made it stop was completing the pattern. Once I did, calm returned immediately, like the world had been corrected. I stopped setting alarms. I stopped making plans for late nights because the hour around 2:17 belonged to something else now. I began avoiding long hallways in public. I began to hate ceilings with access panels the way you hate the sound of a word that has been used as a threat. At work, I would catch myself counting steps without realizing, lining them up with pauses in my breathing. Sometimes I would see my reflection in a window and feel for a split second that it was delayed, then snapping into place. Sometimes I would think in the plural, we should go home, we should eat, we should keep time, and the thought would feel normal until I noticed it. The voice didn't scream. It didn't threaten. It didn't demand anything dramatic. It was patient. Good, it would say in the quiet after the last step. Keep it steady. You're doing well. It sounded like comfort. That's what terrified me most. Because comfort is how you stop fighting. One night, months into it, I tried an experiment again. Not out of hope, but out of desperation to understand. I stayed awake in the hallway with the camera recording and my phone in my hand. I watched the clock inch toward 2:17. At 2:16, the air thickened. At 2:17, instead of standing up because my body wanted to, I forced myself to stay still, knees locked, fingers digging into my palm. Nothing happened above, no footsteps, no pressure. For the first time in months, there was no sound to react to. But inside my chest, the urge rose like a wave. Stand. Walk. Complete. My muscles trembled. The hallway lights flickered once, a soft dip as if the building blinked. In the reflection of the dark window at the end of the hall, I saw myself standing still, except the reflection was walking. 11 steps forward. Pause. 11 back. It wasn't a clear image. It was faint, like a double exposure, but it was there, and the longer I stared, the more it felt like the reflection was learning how to be separate. A calm thought arrived in my mind, gentle as a reminder. The ceiling was never the surface. you were. I stumbled backward into my bedroom and shut the door, shaking. That was the night I finally understood what had happened from the start. I had chosen the top floor because I thought it meant there would be nothing above me. But above wasn't a place. It was a position, a relationship, a concept that could be created anywhere as long as something could maintain it. The footsteps weren't someone walking on the roof. They were a corridor being made through repetition. 11, pause, 11, pause, pressed into tar, pressed into concrete, pressed into my nervous system. Once the pattern had been learned, the ceiling became unnecessary. The corridor could be held open inside a body that woke on schedule, a body that counted, a body that finished the last step no matter what. That's why it had been so precise. That's why it had never missed a night. It wasn't haunting me, it was training me, and training works best when it's consistent. Now I still live on the top floor. There is still no attic, no unit above, no space where someone could walk. But at 2:17 a.m., I stand, and I walk the corridor my body has memorized, and the air settles afterward as if something has been stabilized for another day. Sometimes when the hallway is dark and I'm midway through the steps, I feel a presence behind me, not touching, not grabbing, just there, like an audience member in a theater. And I know it isn't satisfied with the building or the roof or even the pattern itself. It is satisfied with the fact that I keep time, because time is the only door that opens everywhere. If you ever wake up at 2:17 a.m. and hear slow footsteps above your ceiling, but you know there is nothing above you, don't do what I did. Don't test it. Don't count. Don't record it like attention is harmless. Don't hit the ceiling to see if it responds. Don't move your bed to see if it follows. Because every time you notice, you teach it what you are. And once it learns your rhythm, it doesn't need to be above you anymore. It will move into the space where your habits live. It will take the part of you that wakes before you think. It will take the part of you that finishes patterns to feel relief. And one night, you'll become aware mid-step, standing in your hallway, and you'll realize the footsteps were never on the roof at all. They were always on you. Every night at 2:17 a.m., I still walk. 11 steps forward. Pause. 11 steps back. And when I finish, the calm returns so quickly it feels like mercy. Good, the thought says. Gentle and certain. Keep it steady. Then I lie down in bed and stare at the ceiling with my eyes open, waiting for morning. Because sleep is no longer a place I go. It's a place I'm taken from. And somewhere above the roof, above the slab, above the idea of above, I feel something settle into alignment, like a door that could have opened stay shut for one more night. Because I kept the pattern intact. Because I kept time. Because I learned the rhythm. Because I live on the top floor, and it still walked above me until it didn't need above anymore.